Third phase of moon. Third phase of moon.
Third phase of moon. It is blowing up. The channel is gaining so many subscribers as of recently. The information has been coming in so fast. The world is waking up. We have millions of views coming in. People just want to know what's going on above our skies, in space. Are we alone? Well, we have the answers right here at Third Phase Moon coming in from the public. You are the major submitter of the information, and that's what we're going to be going over tonight. Do you guys want to know about crash and retrievals, the true nature of the technology that is being used in the secret Space Force and about to be revealed to the public? We even have politicians demanding information in regards to the UFOs and the technology that has been suppressed. But right now, the origin of this story dates back to what everybody needs to find out. It's crash and retrievals, and we have the expert, Preston Dennett, was able to share some interesting and recent information in regards to the retrieval from extraterrestrial craft that have crashed on our own planet. Dr. J asked the big questions of Preston Dennett in this incredible sit-down discussion of what it's like to retrieve and obtain technology from another planet. Listen up, guys. This goes down the rabbit hole, but historic evidence and facts. Here we go.
1952, Edwards Air Force Base, which, we haven't really discussed. That's been having waves of sightings since 1947, caught on radar, seen by large groups of people, numerous first-hand eyewitness accounts of people seeing UFOs over the space and actually guarding UFOs in hangars and things like this. Reportedly, it's 60 stories down. Reports of people working with live ETs. It's not just the Eisenhower meeting, is my point. It's a lot of stuff, including apparently a UFO crash. Oh, and of course, the astronaut Gordon Cooper filmed a UFO landing right there on the runway at Edwards. Or he didn't film it, but he saw the footage. So here's a case, 1952, from a radar specialist at Edwards Air Force Base, who went public with an incident where he saw a UFO descending toward the Earth at very high speeds. And it was confirmed to have crashed, and the captain who was on duty told him not to say anything, and that it would, not to talk about it. Though this radar operator learned later that it did in fact crash, and that this craft was about 50 feet in diameter with a row of portholes around the circumference. It was intact, but they found, I believe it was humanoid bodies 4.5 feet tall. This is according to Stringfield again. And this object was recovered and quickly shipped off to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where a lot of this stuff ends up.
Yeah, I know, the Blue Room, right?
Well, it's got to be more than just a room, I would think.
Oh, yeah. I think that's just slang for the area, which I would be surprised if has an underground corridor, which leads to a massive underground complex with a lot of things.
Yeah, I think the Blue Room is specifically designed to sort of get the special little tools and stuff that they're figuring out, whereas the actual craft are secreted throughout the United States, and the world for that matter, at a lot of Air Force bases. I'm guessing it's more than just the ones we've heard about. And the bodies, I'm presuming, are kept in medical areas and studied there. I mean, this was what happened with Roswell. We tracked that thing from beginning to end. That's why I love that case. But there's so many others, like 1967.
Ooh, okay. What happened then?
This was another really interesting case. And kind of has a sad ending, unfortunately. A Marine officer from the Canine Corps was assigned to Camp Pendleton. Got a number of cases from Camp Pendleton. He was a guard, and he became really curious about the contents of this hangar that they were guarding. This was, they had flown him out to this remote area out in the middle of nowhere, and there was this hangar. And so finally he decides to take a peek inside, And to his shock, he sees this 30-foot wide metallic saucer with a dome on top, and it was surrounded by, scientists apparently from the Air Force who were working on this craft, studying it with all these instruments. And suddenly, a security officer grabs him and escorts him to the headquarters tent, where he's reminded of his security oath and was sent back to Camp Pendleton for a reassignment. So this is, 1967. In 1980, he goes public. He tells his story and immediately starts suffering a series of harassments from unidentified government agencies. And he was, dead set on going public until his fiancée was killed in a mysterious hit-and-run accident.
They can't kill you, they'll kill your loved ones.
This is how they kind of do it. They make it look like an accident. It's, no joke. There's been some research into this, people who have died as a result of getting too close to the truth. And it's a thing. And that's apparently what happened to this guy's fiancée. And since then, of course, he halted the investigation. So it seems to be a pretty effective method to make people keep quiet.
What would the next year be for something in California?
Well, let's see. I think it would go up to the Norton Air Force Base again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this was 1973, not the 1988 incident.
Yeah. The war they went into that room and saw this special craft. Yeah.
Right. This is according to John Lear, and involved an Air Force photographer who he calls Mike. And Mike was just, a photographer when suddenly they bump up his secret clearance, and he's flown off to Norton Air Force Base for a temporary assignment. So he lands at the base, and immediately he's put into a bus with blackened windows and driven to an undisclosed location. I can talk about another Camp Pendleton case like this, by the way, which is in my latest book, First-Hand Witness that I talked to.
Which book is the most recent one?
On Board UFO.
Ah, yes, I have that right there on my bookshelf to the right of me.
So yeah, this California, it's got a lot of cases like this. So yeah.
Let me ask you this. I've heard in 2008, Needles, California, there was another crash. Do you know anything about that?
I may have skipped a couple. It's hard to remember all of them all, to be honest. I do seem to remember something about that now that you mention it, but I'd have to look it up. But
Off the top of your memory, what is the most recent crash and retrieval of an unidentified flying object, better yet known now as an advanced aerospace vehicle in California?
Oh, in California?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't have a whole lot of current information on that, unfortunately, because I wrote that book, 2006, which is
14 years ago.
Okay,
then I'm going to go back to the 40s, but before I do, let's ask that same question, but throughout the entire U.S. and maybe even globally. What is the most recent UFO extraterrestrial crash that happened anywhere in the United States or globally that happened closest to 2020?
Well, there's that incident in Brazil, which is causing all kinds of to-do on the internet because this story apparently is getting taken down from a number of sites. And, I was curious, so I looked it up, and it took me a while to get some good information on this because I was hearing it was a hoax. But I did find some interesting information where apparently these numerous orbs were filmed. There's a bunch of video of them that you can see going over this town outside of Brazil. Outside of Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. And apparently one of these things was seen crashing into the forest, and the police were sent to go take a look at it and were blocked by military. So that's really all the information I could find out. I hope someone grabs the horns on this case and really looks into it.
I'm going to ask AJ Gavard about that. I'm going to call him soon and ask him about that, as you know him. I'll let you tell people who he is.
Yeah, he's the guy for Brazil for sure. I would trust him if he could take a look at it, because investigating a UFO crash from here in Brazil is certainly not you know tenable.
What year in Brazil? You're talking 2020?
Yeah, this is the
Wow! Whoa, okay, now I'm even more excited. Okay, so as I mentioned in the title, we're going to be talking about the most recent cases and give a history of cases in the United States. We hit the gold mine, folks. Anybody who is in Brazil, just like people plan to storm Area 51 and check out them aliens, go to Brazil and figure out what the hell crashed and get some photographs, video, and better yet, steal some of that tech and bring it back here, and we'll keep you protected. Okay, well, we'll try our best. Everyone just grab your Glocks and we'll do our best. Now, let's go back to the 40s. Like I said at the beginning, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, 1941. Now, throughout any other states, what would you say, considering we've covered California, so we'll exclude California for the rest of this show, what was the next crash off top of your memory in the United States?
Yeah, I would go to New Mexico for sure, because that one, boy, that was fascinating researching that state to see how many. I mean, that was the most of any other state that I could find, which makes sense because this is where we had a lot of our nuclear research going on at the time. But here's a case, very interesting, from August of 1945, which apparently took place on the Padilla Ranch outside of San Antonio. This is in New Mexico. Two young people who were working at the ranch, Jose and Remigio, were on the ranch looking for a lost cow when they came upon this crashed UFO. And they saw this very long, wide gash in the ground. There was an object at the end of it lying sort of on its side, partially buried, surrounded by a field of debris. It had broken up quite a bit, cracked in half. And so they walk up to this thing. There's thin, shiny material like tinfoil all around. They pick one up, and it behaves pretty much exactly like we've heard the Roswell metal did. He folded it up, and boom, it unfolds.
Memory metal, that's right. June
Yeah,
Crane,
exactly.
if you recall, from Roswell, a secretary maybe in Roswell. She was also one of the people who handled it. I don't know which officer handed it to her. And if everyone out there recalls, not too long after Preston, because of time issues, when our Revolution radio show in 2013 was moved to prime time after being on Saturdays, I had a chance to interview Jesse Marcel Jr., who held Roswell debris when he was, I believe, age 11 in 1947, who sadly passed away about 2 weeks after that interview. So it is a classic one that people can check out on this channel. You just got to go back a few years. Now, so we know Jesse Marcel Sr., we know Jesse Marcel Jr., we know June Crane. You just mentioned this other person. I mean, I can think of several people that have touched this memory metal from multiple crashes.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys have done a number of interviews on this incident. They wrote a book about it. It's a real incident. They came upon this craft. It had a giant gash in the side. They could see movement, and they heard what they sounded like a jackrabbit screaming, is what they thought. Sounded like it was in pain. Mind you, they're like 9 years old, so they're getting a little frightened. And it's starting to get, it's dusky, starting to get dark. They go home and tell the ranch owner what happened, and he agrees to check it out. They call the police, and they go back there to this site, and it's been cleaned up a little bit. The ETs are gone. The craft is still there, but most of the debris is gone. Only the craft itself, which is fairly large, is there. And not only that, it's been sort of buried a little bit. There's branches put up as if to hide it, as if someone came upon it and didn't want anyone to see it. So someone had been to the site without their knowledge. And it was shortly later, a sergeant from the Army shows up, identifies himself as Sergeant Avila, and said that a weather balloon, an experimental weather balloon, quote, had come down on their property, and he wanted permission to move it. He needed permission because to get it, they would have to tear down this guy's fence and use heavy equipment, which they did. August 20th. August 20th, 1945, they come in there with a giant crane and pull this thing out.
Wait! If people recall our history of the world, August 20th, 1945, what day did we drop the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Was it August 18th?
Oh, really?
No, it was July or August. The point was, I mean, we're literally talking about boom goes Hiroshima, boom goes Nagasaki a month before in the Trinity test in New Mexico, and then we have a crash.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly what drew UFOs to us in very large numbers is our indiscriminate atomic testing. No doubt. This is something a lot of researchers have pinpointed, and I think a very popular theory.
I love the way Stanton Friedman put it. It was like, uh-oh, the kids have found the matches, and all of a sudden we were swarmed with ET craft. By the way, let me give a shout-out to a good friend and super chatter, a member of the Blue Crew, Mr. Rockstar. Thank you very much for your support. Now, so we got August 20th, 1945. Off the top of your memory, what is next? And by the way, as you're going through these, if any of them are not disc-shaped or say are something else, please do let us know.
Yeah, well, by the way, for that case on the ranch there, they did recover some metallic debris and were able to get it analyzed, which did have some very unusual properties. It looked like it was composed of aluminum, except the metal had a strange structure, and it wouldn't melt at a 2,000 degree flame. Of course, aluminum silicate is supposed to melt at 700 degrees. So there was some carbon and other trace minerals that were being used to sort of enhance the conductive power and eliminate the resistance to electricity. So it's something strange about that metal for sure. But yeah, they wrote a book on it called, I believe the title was Born on the Edge of Ground Zero. So yeah, the next case I could find in New Mexico was May 29th, 1947. Mind you, this is very shortly before Roswell. And this is according to former state representative John Kistner, who said that radar technicians at White Sands had observed unidentified radar targets hovering west of White Sands. And they sent out a surface-to-air missile at it, and this warhead exploded. This was an atomic weapon. Exploded at 60,000 feet, and
apparently they do a lot more damage when they're tens of thousands of feet above the ground level, even just 10,000 feet, as opposed to actually having an at ground level detonation.
Yeah, well, it worked. Following this explosion, the target was tracked on radar moving south, and 10 minutes later it impacted right outside the town of Juarez, New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And U.S. officials, jumped on it, but it had already been closed off by Mexican officials. Apparently, though, whatever had crashed there was pretty much vaporized. So that's another one.
Do you think it was vaporized because of the impact of the crash?
I don't know. I can only speculate. If it was close to a warhead, that would certainly do it, I would think.
Yeah, true. Okay, what would be the next case you think of? Because these are great. People are loving it, as am I. I'm giddy on this for sure, because I've spoken to Ryan Wood a few times, and I recall a few years ago he said he was going to write a book on crashes and retrievals. I haven't followed up with him about that book, and the last couple times I spoke to him and Dr. Bob Wood, his father, I never did ask if that book was completed, but I would know just from speaking to him about crashes and retrievals, he definitely didn't know many of the cases that you've already written about.
Yeah. I love New Mexico because there's just so many of them. And yeah, I know everyone knows the Roswell crash, but not a dead horse. I'm going to keep beating it.
Oh, me
uh,
too. Me too.
because it's a great case, and I'm not sure people really know the whole story because it just continues to unfold. There's some 50 books on this. I pulled them all together and wrote about it. And one thing I found very interesting that I don't think a lot of people know is that it didn't touch down on Mac Brazel's ranch first. It touched down twice before that and once after that before finally crashing on the other side of the mountains.
Now, did it collide with another craft that was where the geologists found it? Or let me ask you this, because I heard for the first time this past Saturday when I spoke to Paul Blake Smith about the Cape Girardeau, Missouri crash, that he said he also believes that involved two different crash sites. Not because that he thinks it crashed with another craft, which possibly is the case, but according to Paul, he said Linda Moulton Howe told him that she believes that upon a AAV, also known as an ET craft, or UFO, flying saucer, whatever you want to call it, as it's going to crash, they have like a jettison where it has, where I guess the actual ETs will sort of, be ejected from the craft in a little module or capsule of some sort. And that's what she told him she believes is the reason why there was multiple crash sites in Roswell and Cape Girardeau. Cape Girardeau, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different stories circulating. The Barney Barnett, Stanton Friedman always maintained there was a crash at Corona and at Roswell.
Yes.
So I believe there probably was multiple crashes. I don't know if they actually collided into each other, because I know with the Roswell crash, they've traced this thing. I mean, they had witnesses to this thing. It touched down first on a ranch north of Roswell, where it left this really kind of fused sand, which turned to glass, rose up again, came down on the ranch bordering Mac Brazel's, left a gouge in the earth there, went up again, smacked the ground really hard on the Brazel ranch, shattering the outer skin, the outer layer, which was sort of all that metal that they found.
Mm-hmm.
But the body of the craft continued on, actually, and went over the mountains there. The Capitan Mountains, where another rancher actually saw this thing scrape the tops of trees and scatter more foil-like debris, took off again and crashed on the other side, which is where it was apparently found by, Jim Ragsdale and the group of archaeologists and a bunch of other people. So that's where Sheriff George Wilcox received a call about an aircraft accident and called Dan Dwyer at the fire department.
Sheriff George Wilcox, the police officer or sheriff obviously in Roswell, New Mexico, right, in 47?
Yeah, so right at the beginning now we're having this confusion, because right now they're talking about the actual crash site, when really it was Mac Brazel's debris field that got a lot of the fame. So
Yes.
It's a great case. I love it because we've talked to people who've guarded this debris, who've seen the bodies, who picked the wreckage up, who flew the wreckage, who examined the wreckage. So it's a great case.
Including Colonel Philip Corso. He says that when the bodies were taken to Wright Pat, they stopped in Fort Riley, Kansas, and he himself had a chance to look in one of the smaller coffin-sized boxes, and he did see one of the dead ETs.
Yeah, a lot of people have gone on record using their real names with this case. So it's a great case. It's not going to go away. It's going to be the case, I think, that ultimately busts this field wide open. I hope so. But it was right on the heels of that was, I believe, the Aztec crash.
Just a year later, right? What month did that take place in 48?
Gosh, let me think. All these dates are hard to keep
I know,
straight.
right? Especially when there's so many. And
no,
for the record, Timothy Good said that a very, very conservative number of crash and retrievals that have occurred is at least 100. And he said that is the absolute minimum. He believes the number to be far, far higher than that.
Yeah, I would say that's a joke. It's more like 1,000 at least.
Yes, thank you. That's the point I was getting at when he said
But
far higher than that. He said it's minimum 100. That's the bare minimum. Very super ultra conservative. It's probably in the four digits, which I believe is very reasonable.
it wouldn't surprise me if there's more than that because, from the 5 states I looked at, each had like 10. So what's that, 50? And if you times, there's 50 states.
And
So,
200 some countries.
right, we haven't even gone out the U.S. But yeah, the Aztec crash was 1950, I believe.
Oh, I thought it was
Wasn't it?
48.
Or no, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the actual lecture
Okay.
from Silas Newton when it kind of busted open. Frank Scully, God bless him, was the first guy to ever talk about UFO crashes in his book Behind the Flying Saucers.
Mm-hmm.
And he was attacked and ignored for years. No UFO researchers would touch UFO crash retrievals. For
What a
years.
shame. Really, what a shame because you have those golden years where they were closer to the event, and it's just a shame that people wouldn't touch it because of fear of the ridicule.
Right. The actual crash for Aztec was right on the heels of Roswell's February 1948. Some people say it's March. The date's a little bit disputed, which happens in a number of these cases. What's great about the Aztec case, though, is this thing was a very large craft. According to Scully's source, it was just about 100 feet in diameter. It was so light, only a few people could lift this thing up. And they came upon it, and it was fully intact except for one tiny hole, a pencil-like hole in one of the portholes. And it took them a while to figure out how to get inside. What they ended up doing is sticking a pole through this hole and flicking a switch, which caused a little porthole to open. And inside they found, varies according to various sources, but at least 12, possibly 16 small gray-type ETs, all dead, apparently from explosive decompression.
From the hole, right?
Right. This is an interesting case because it's one of the few cases where they, apparently recovered food in the form of small wafers.
Ooh, very interesting. I don't recall that detail. So, did they ever have the wafers analyzed, or again, were they just confiscated?
I'm sure they were analyzed, yeah, but we don't know what happened. But this is apparently one of the very important UFO crashes because we learned a lot of technology from this particular incident. I know William Steinman was the first person to sort of take a second look at this case, and he pretty much proved that Scully was telling the truth.
Wasn't it oil workers who came upon the crash?
Yeah, I believe that's right. Since then, Scott Ramsey and has written a book about it, and apparently this craft was taken from Aztec to Fort Riley, and according to one soldier who was supposedly involved, said there were 16 bodies, and they were all completely alike, dressed in tight jumpsuits.
Black?
I don't know, but they had very human-like features, he said, kind of yellowish skin, had teeth.
Oh, that's a new one for me. I've yet to hear of a species that has teeth, like a lot of the typical rays that have the slit for mouth, no ears, no nose, allegedly have just gums.
Yeah, this case has a lot of witnesses to it. I know researcher Chuck Oldham apparently talked to a witness who was a military officer with a very high security clearance and was stationed at a base where there was this library that was restricted to people with a very high security clearance. And he's just looking for something to read, and he comes upon this UFO file, which apparently describes the Aztec case in detail, including photos. And he said there was one photo there which showed this perfectly intact, circular-shaped craft lying somewhat tilted to the side. I'm wondering if this is what, Leon Christ and his wife saw.
Oh, on the TV, yeah.
Right. Could be. But at any rate, it looked metallic, looked like brushed aluminum, he said. And there was this report next to it that described the whole thing in detail, that it was recovered near Farmington, New Mexico. There was portholes, it said, that were not made of glass. described the puncture and how they opened this thing. They had to try diamond drills, nothing worked, and eventually got into the cabin. Didn't have much other detail than that. But what's interesting is the Farmington UFO wave,
Mm-hmm.
which occurred like a year later, was one of the biggest single UFO sightings in U.S. history. There was some 200-300 objects sighted by literally half the town. And there's some speculation that these objects were coming as sort of a memoriam, or I don't know, something to memorialize the Aztec UFO crash.
We want to thank Dr. J and Preston Dennett for their incredible insight. If you want to hear the entire discussion in regards to crash retrievals of the UFOs, check out Dr. J and tell him Third Phase of Moon sent you, Blake Cousins. We'll see you again next time.